Good afternoon. I'm going to make a brief discussion of my 100-word statement, and I'll read my statement first. Many historical studies produce knowledge we use to examine relations among multiple individual and collective actors, their ideologies and institutions. These relations create spaces, typically far less than global. Other spaces have borders, from the spaces people of single communities draw to those negotiated between adjacent states. Global history has no specific temporal units, as it combines subjects occupying different scales and types of space through various additional methods of comparison and connection to reach levels that are more global. It deploys diverse methodologies for different subjects and seeks to combine in many transdisciplinary ways, sometimes over long stretches of time. I wrote my statement in this manner with the hope of thinking of how global history will develop in the future and the ways in which it can be a capacious framework within which historical studies of many different scales, spatially and temporally, can fit. And the challenge, it seems to me, is to recognize that beyond the global level of comparisons and connections that has defined the field in large measure to date, we need to fill in the kinds of processes that vary and are connected at different spatial scales. And when we do that, we're able to make a much more rich and nuanced kind of history that recognizes that if we are serious that the local is in the global and we see the global in the local, we need to understand what's happening everywhere in between. Not individually, of course, but that we need ways in which we consciously conceive historical scholarship to be contributions to some larger systemic form of knowledge. Now, I want to stress that in putting it in these terms, I'm not trying to define the types of history that should be done. I deliberately said diverse methodologies for different subjects because I think every part of history, be it cultural history, economic history, social history, political, choose an adjective, they all belong in global history. And they all, it seems to me, are researchable at different spatial scales. And questions that are asked and what's discovered will vary accordingly. And it's the integration of all of these efforts that seems to me the real opportunity for global history to enrich itself in a manner that continues to use a global frame of reference, but seeks to find ways in which to house in that frame of reference. That's the foundation, in a sense, for building the architecture of history as a discipline in which many different kinds of history can then be housed. So I would say that the types of comparisons and connections one sees at different levels of space will often be themselves quite different from each other. And one of the challenges then is to imagine how certain activities that we, let us say, start at a local level, are conceived by a scholar in a local setting, how then they're connected to the other kinds of activities that happen at global. One of the deficiencies in global history is if we only look at the comparisons and connections, and especially connections that span large spaces, international actors, be they states, NGOs, or what have you, we really lose the texture of what their actions mean in specific locales with different types of actors. And that, I think, unintentionally can lead to the limits on global history that we would want to overcome by incorporating additional forms of scholarship and using it something that will integrate the discipline at a time when it's under challenge in many parts of the world, both in society at large and even within our universities. So it's with that hope that I have written these remarks, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to participate in what is a very innovative and creative project. Thank you.